Hello, I hope you're having a great day. For today's video, I'm sharing a card that has an interactive element that doesn't add much bulk to the card. I'm using Lawn Fawn's Mermaid for You stamp set to create an underwater scene. I've cut out and colored a bunch of images, and most of them I'll be using for the card. I'm using a piece of Canson XL watercolor paper and taping it down to a board so I'll stay flat when I use water with it. And for this card, I'm using Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers to create the background. I picked out 4 colors ranging in blues: Persian blue, blue, cobalt blue, and light blue. And to start, I'm just drawing some wavy lines using each of these markers to fill up the space on the watercolor paper, and then taking a watercolor brush pen to blend these lines out. I'll repeat this 3 times because the first layer is pretty light, and I'll use a heat gun in between to speed up the drying process and repeat the same technique. I do this because I want the layers of color to become dark enough to show through the vellum. And it can look super messy, but I think the effect adds to the look of water, and also the vellum will mostly cover it up. But I still think that the extra effort in creating this background looks really nice. And since the card is going to be mainly vellum in front, it just needs to be dark enough to show through. And I think the vellum adds to the underwater look as well. So when I'm satisfied with how the background looks, I will remove it from the board and I'll trim it down to an A2 size card panel. So next I need to die cut out some vellum pieces for layers of waves. I want this piece to be a little longer than the width of the card. Since I won't be adhering this directly to the front of the card, I'll actually be using the excess vellum on the sides to tape to the back of the card panel. For the wave die cuts, I'm using Sweet Stamp Shop's wave borders, and there are 2 different wave sizes that I'm using. Originally I had cut 3 short layers for the waves, but I didn't like how the overlap of the vellum looked. It just didn't look continuous to me. So I went back and I cut out pieces that would cover the entire card panel, and then longer panels with the wave die cut. I also decided to add Distress ink in Salty Ocean to the back of the vellum piece to give it a bit more color. Without the Distress ink, the vellum made the card look a bit frosty and gray, so I wanted to add that extra color to it, and it's really subtle, but I think it helps out with the overall effect. For the vellum panel that will cover the entire card, I cut out a piece of vellum larger than an A2 size card, and I added adhesive to it using Stick It adhesive so it covers the entire panel. I'll trim down the panel to 4¼ by 5½ and adhere this to the top of the card panel. I really like how the Stick It adhesive works for vellum because you can see adhesive if you place it behind vellum, and since this covers the entire panel of vellum, you can't tell that there's adhesive behind there. So that's a nice trick that I like to use when working with vellum. So once I have this piece cut out, I'll use a Teflon bone folder to make sure the adhesive is stuck to the vellum, and I will adhere it to the card panel. I'll add the other layers of vellum and decide how far apart I want the waves to be. And once I figure it out, I'll use the excess vellum on the side and use my tape runner to adhere the sides to the back of the card. This way the vellum isn't adhered to the front of the card at all, and you'll see I use it to add the images in between the waves and on top of the waves, and this will also allow me to create the movement for the interactive part of the card. Once I have all the vellum waves in place, I play with how I want the scene to look. I definitely cut and colored more images that I didn't need or use, but that's okay. I can use them for another card. So when I decide where I want to place these images, I'm also deciding on which images I want to have movement. I decided that the narwhal and the pink mermaid would be the images that will be moving. So for the rest of the images on the card, I'm going to run them through the Xyron sticker maker. and these will create stickers out of all these images. So I carefully insert them into the Xyron sticker maker and pull on the tape so I can add more images. And once I have all my images added, I'll cut that off and I'll use my Teflon bone folder to run around all the edges of the images, as well as making sure that the adhesive is stuck to the images. So now these are all stickers, and I'll go ahead and add them to the card how I decided. So I stick some on the front wave and I'll stick some behind the waves as well. Because it's vellum, it's transparent, so you can see the images through the little waves. I think that adds to the underwater look. I wanted the second school of fish to be underwater, but to make sure that you could see them through the vellum, I put them in the sticker maker backwards so the adhesive is on the image front. So I can adhere it behind the wave, but directly on the vellum. For the two images that I didn't run through the Xyron sticker maker, I'm going to punch a hole in the vellum where I want them to be on the card. And this is how I'm going to create a mechanism to help make them move. I have two small circle die cuts, and I'm adding a small glue dot to the circle die and putting it behind the vellum through the punched hole. I'm adhering the images over the glue dot, and this allows the images to move, but there's not much added bulk. And with the narwhal, there was a little trouble with his little horn, so I just moved it until I was satisfied with the movement. I chose to use the Waving Hello sentiment from the stamp set, and I want to use white embossing powder on the vellum so it pops. So I use my anti-static powder tool on the vellum area that I'm going to stamp the sentiment, and Versamark ink for the sentiment itself. I'm adding Hero Arts white embossing powder and heat setting this, and the sentiment is done. The last step to this card is to adhere it to a A2 size card base, and I use my tape runner to do so, and the card is done. I like this technique a lot because although it's interactive, there isn't much bulk to the card and it stays relatively flat. I like how you probably wouldn't expect anything to move, but it does, and it's a great way to surprise your recipient. I always like to use vellum to add to an underwater scene, and I think it really works here. So I hope you enjoy the card and try it out yourself. I'll be back next week with another video and hope you'll join me then. Have a great day. Bye.